Good evening, friends. Welcome to the Audit the Vote podcast. I am your host, Toni Shoop. That is our new intro video for the Audit the Vote podcast. So please let me know if it sucks, because I did it and I've been working on it for a long time. We had to get away from the other video because we kept getting dinged for the Kid Rock song, American Rock and Roll. So I've been working on that new video for a long time. And of course, when you work on something of your own and it's ends up being what you want, you think it's amazing. But if it's not, I need to know, because this show isn't for me, it's for you, the viewers. So please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're watching it on. If there's anything that you can do to help us in this season of our journey right now, it is liking our content, subscribing to our channels, and sharing it with other people. Our email open rates are nowhere near what they used to be. And so we've got to build a stronger social media presence in order to still have a seat at the table and get our message out and our reach out. And I am excited to announce that we are finally on Apple Podcast and Spotify. So if you listen to podcasts on either of those platforms, you can now search for Audit the Vote, and you'll see our new logo with the ballot and the magnifying glass and the red check mark, and it says Audit the Vote. And so another way that you can listen on a regular basis to our weekly podcast, that will be uploaded tomorrow. So you won't have access to that tonight, but that will be uploaded tomorrow. So if you're on YouTube or Rumble or Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, Twitch, whatever it is, hit the like button. I'll give you 10 seconds. Go ahead, click, click, click. And please share this out, because my guest tonight is going to rock everybody's world, including my own. We just met over the weekend. I think God is aligning our steps to come against the right people at the right time to get the message out that he has ordained. And it's riveting what this guy has been through. And I'm really looking forward to sharing him with the Audit the Vote audience and to getting feedback and questions. So be on your chat and be ready for this one, you guys. I was at a Republican committee meeting in Pittsburgh right before this and spoke. And I asked, the first thing I said when I stood up was, does anybody know the name Stewart Rhodes? And there were just a couple hands that went up. And I will admit that if I wasn't following this stuff as closely as I am, I probably would have been in that camp as well. But you need to know who he is, because his background and what he's been through related to January 6th is gut-wrenching. If we don't get these stories out to the public, it's going to happen again. This is how we fight back. Get questions all the time. How do we defeat the deep state? What can I do? I'm just one person. Well, you can share this with somebody, and they can share it with somebody who shares it with somebody, and we can make a difference together. So like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell so that you get alerted when we go live, just in case I get a little bit crazy and decide to pop on in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, because I'm actually a night person turned into a bat every once in a while. Now that it's summer, I don't have to get my kids up and out of bed. You just never know when you're going to see me on these platforms. So like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell. Couple announcements before we bring in. Thank you, Amy, for reposting the stream. Thank you, everybody. Hi, Mark. It's good to see you. Couple of quick announcements. The first thing I want to talk about, which I mentioned last week, and Joel's going to cue up a video, is the new Patriot Academy course that launches on June the 30th called Rebuilding Liberty. My audience is probably already really familiar with Patriot Academy, but if you happen to be watching this for the first time and you're not, go to patriotacademy.com and check out what they're doing. That is how I got active into politics in this movement. I was politically clueless. I took Constitution Alive class in the fall of 2020. It woke me up. It empowered me to do something when they stole our election in Pennsylvania. And now I work for them, actually. And they're expanding their programs. We're going to talk about one of them in just a minute. But before we do that, Joel, if you'll pull up the flyer, you can register for free. It doesn't cost a dime. June 30th on Monday nights, we're going to host Rebuilding Liberty. The class will start at 8 p.m. Eastern. The videos are less than an hour, so this is going to be a 4-week series. This is what people have been asking for through Patriot Academy, is we needed something a little bit shorter, a little bit kind of wet people's whistle. Biblical Citizenship is phenomenal as it is, and Constitution Alive. I still love both of those courses. The feedback that we've gotten is the videos are long. And my one colleague at Patriot Academy says, the brain cannot absorb any more than the rear end can't endure. And I'm stealing that from him because I think that's hilarious, but also true. And so Rebuilding Liberty has been designed not just to rebuild liberty, of course, to do that, but to raise awareness about the 250th anniversary of our nation's history. On July 4th, 2026, we will celebrate 250 years. I think if we hadn't gotten President Trump back in the White House, we wouldn't even have a snowball's chance, as they say, in celebrating our 250th anniversary. But now we have a crack in the window is open, and this course is designed to wake even more people up before then. And it's going to focus a lot on the Declaration of Independence and kind of the history behind that. Of course, yours truly makes a appearance as long as I don't get edited out, which is always possible. Joel, if you'll get that video ready to play, hopefully everybody has this flyer. If you are going to sign up for the class, the QR code is right there. And I'm also going to be emailing out. I did it last week. I'm going to get into a rhythm of this with the show now that it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, is you'll get an email on Friday with the notes. And so all of this stuff will be in there, and you'll have access to not just join and sign up, but to share it with other people. So with that being said, Joel, if you would go ahead and play the video of Rebuilding Liberty to give people a taste of what that's going to look like, go ahead and do that now.
Will not rebuild liberty from the national level. It's not going to happen from Washington, D.C. You have to rebuild from the ground up.
We've already got the roadmap that our founding fathers laid out for us of what they did when they were in this position. You live in the greatest country in the world. It's the greatest country in the world because the government was made by the people who live in it.
People have been bullied into silence for so long. We want to re-educate people. It's time for us to go on offense.
Psalm 121 tells us, unless the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain that build it. Now the Bible tells us, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do?
Wherever you are, there's something you can do. You don't have to be the expert. You can do something in your community.
That is just so cool. I get chills thinking about it. It's exciting. So sign up. The next Patriot Academy spotlight moment that I want to share is there is multiple programs coming out. Of course, there's the Constitution Coach Program. There's the Leadership Congress. There is the Constitutional Defense. The newest program that's going to have the biggest impact, I think, on the remnant, the next generation, is the Patriot Institute. It's a 1-year gap program that they piloted this past year. It's going to officially launch in September of 2025. So if you know an 18-year-old kid that graduated high school and doesn't know what they want to do with their life, they're the perfect candidate for this gap year program that's going to teach them about the biblical foundation of our nation and history, but also infuse in them a good, solid worldview while it teaches them to bring out what does God have you to do in this world. It's not just go to college to get a piece of paper for a degree that you're not even sure you want to work in that industry, but let's seek him first and let's seek truth, and he has a plan for you. And the 18-year-old kid is going to get taught how to run their finances and how to cook and how to just live life, but then also what are you meant to do here, whether that's become an entrepreneur. If you want to be an attorney or an engineer, you're going to need a college degree. There's even a possibility you'll be able to get some college credit in terms of courses while you're spending September through May of 2025 and 2026 at the Patriot Institute. But the whole reason of me bringing that up is because let's say there was a test run available that you're not quite sure you want to send your 18-year-old for the whole year, but tell me more about it. And that's where they launched something called the Patriot Intensive. In the video, I'm going to have Joel play. Actually, if you could pull up the website for me, we could go to patriotacademy.com/institute, and you can get more information on this particular program. The Patriot Intensive, which I'm going to have Joel play a video when I'm done talking, is a preview, if you will, of what the gap year experience could be. It's from July 2nd to August 2nd. So it's a 30-day program. And the value that I see is this. I graduated from Penn State University. I went to the University Park campus as a young kid, 18-year-old freshman, very impressionable. I came from a good conservative home with good morals and values. And then I went into college and it was just like, if my parents had had a 30-day preview of what my 4-year college journey was going to look like, there is no way they would have allowed me to go, because let's face it, folks, college is insane. It's full of drugs. It's full of promiscuity. It's full of all kind of extra stuff that they're trying to indoctrinate us with. And oh, by the way, maybe when you're done, you'll get a piece of paper that says you can go work in corporate America in the field you're not even sure you want to be in. So not the best plan, in my opinion, for an 18-year-old kid, but something like this is perfect. And so scroll down a little bit more, Joel, because it'll show the different options with the Patriot Institute. if you can go either for the 30 days, July 2nd to August 2nd, which actually I'm going to be there for. There it is. 1 month intensive 2025. They're having 125 plus students. The tuition is $19.97, but in the video, Rick's going to talk about a scholarship program that he was able to secure. Scroll up just a little bit more, Joel, because it shows the people that are going to be there. And I'm down. Sorry, scroll down. My husband and I and the family are actually going to be in Fredericksburg as part of this from July 2nd to July 19th. There it is. Meet the team of people that are making up the Patriot Institute. And you're going to get a chance to hear from Rick is really just trying to mold the next generation. You see Laura Logan on there. She's going to be talking about the future of journalistic integrity. Adam Curry, the father of the podcast, is going to be teaching young people about media that want to go into media. I saw that I was on there. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on there too. How cool is that? John Devine, that's a new one. Texas Supreme Court Justice will teach on the judiciary and restoring blind equal justice. Wow. So 30 days. Joel, go ahead and queue up the video. The website, again, patriotacademy.com/institute will give you all the information about these programs that you could possibly have. And then if you have questions, I'm Toni with an I at patriotacademy.com. And go ahead and cue that video up, Joel, and roll it.
Hey, Patriots, we've had a lot of great opportunities for you in the past. I can honestly say this is the best one we've ever been able to offer you. An entire month right here at the Patriot Academy campus. Not only do you get the National Leadership Congress, but this time you can come for the whole week of the National Leadership Congress and the 3 weeks leading up to that. So July 2nd to August 2nd, an entire month right here at the Patriot Academy campus. You get to do a constitutional defense course. You get to learn from Chris Dunham, from Adam Curry, the podfather himself, Laura Logan, the last surviving real journalist on the planet. Myself and a lot of other people are going to be pouring into you for an entire month. And we have an amazing donor that has stepped up and offered 50 full scholarships. So you can come for the whole month on a full ride. You got to check it out right now at patriotacademy.com/institute.
Very cool. So if money is the problem, there's scholarships available. I'm not sure, Lola Days, about being able to do it in after the 4-year degree. We'll have more answers, I'm sure, as time rolls on and this program unfolds as we build it. But it's definitely worth checking out and looking into if you're at all considering the Patriot Institute for your 18-year-old. This intensive is their perfect preview. So on to some local news, national news, and then we'll get Stewart up here because he is the real purpose of why I'm doing this tonight. Joel, cue up that TikTok video. So what's going on in Pennsylvania right now with election integrity? Well, a whole lot of hot mess, nothing, except for some horrific bills that are coming out of the House and the Senate. So for my listeners that are relatively new and are on this journey together, learning how politics works, the House and the Senate are in session in the summer. They're doing the budget. June is one of the most important months for the Pennsylvania General Assembly, which 5 years ago I was still calling Congress until someone kindly corrected me that it's the Pennsylvania General Assembly. Yes, we have our own House, our own Senate, completely separate from Congress that is down in D.C. And these people are the ones that affect our daily lives, and we need to be paying close attention to. And so they're in session this month. They're cutting the budget. Keep an eye on crazy stuff to come out of the House because it's Democrat controlled, and pray to God that the Senate kills anything that is horrific enough to make it over there from the House. And just keep your eyes peeled because it's a mess. But there is a TikTok video that someone sent me today with a little bit of election integrity news. It's funny how when folks on the MAGA side of the aisle ask questions about elections, we are labeled election deniers. But apparently, if you're a Democrat in the House in Pennsylvania, you can ask questions, and it might be a little difficult to get the answers that you're looking for, but it's okay. So go ahead and cue up that TikTok video, Joel, and let's show people what's going on in Cambria County.
Pennsylvania related to the 2024 presidential election. House Representative Frank Burns has requested a new search for records related to the voting system failure in Cambria County, Pennsylvania. I'm going to read a little bit from this local news article to give you some context around what's going on in Cambria County. Representative Frank Burns requested any documentation explaining the nature of the voting machine malfunction that led ballots going unscanned and unaccounted for. He also requested a tally of how many ballots were successfully or unsuccessfully scanned on Election Day. Now, you guys might be asking, if this issue happened in November, why is it right now in June that these records are now being looked for? But the thing is, of course, Representative Frank Burns actually initially made this request to Cambria County and was denied. He was denied. And so he had to go to the Office of Open Records in Pennsylvania, and they overturned the decision from the county. So now they have 30 days to provide these records or to admit that they don't exist. I'm going to read a little bit more from the article that talks specifically what happened on November 5th. The November 5th, 2024 issue reportedly involved voting machines that had passed pre-election testing but failed when used, prompting concerns from voters and lawmakers alike. Burns has continued to push for transparency surrounding the incident, stating that the public still has no clear explanation for what went wrong or how many ballots were impacted. And a representative from the county commented and said that the county has no issue with completing another search to answer questions, which the county has already gone to great lengths in answering. Bullshit. All right. So 30 days, like I said, they have 30 days to provide Representative Frank Burns with these records. Hopefully we'll find out sooner, but whatever happened in Pennsylvania, we're going to get an explanation. Bet on that.
Are we now? You know why we're going to get an explanation? Because Frank Burns is a Democrat in Pennsylvania. And Cambria County, oh, by the way, in November of 2023, when we exposed that the State Department's own website deleted over 300,000 of the in-person vote totals from Caroline Carluccio, Republican candidate for the Supreme Court, that bulk of that came out of Cambria County. And yes, we tried to get answers. They could have provided documentation, but of course they didn't. Well, now they're in the hot seat again. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, Frank Burns, for actually caring about election integrity for a change. Much appreciated it is. We're going to skip through some of the other stuff. Events that I will be at. I'm going to be in Erie County tomorrow night. Chris, if you're watching, we need to connect so I can figure out what time I'm leaving and when to get there. But I'm going to be doing my last Foundations of Freedom class in Erie County at the Patriot Valley Ranch. I'm looking forward to spending time with you patriots up there. And so Republican committee meeting tonight in Allegheny, tomorrow night in Erie. The other thing that is on my agenda, if you could get the graphic, Joel, for the judge of election races, our campaign is in full swing. The best way we can protect elections right now in Pennsylvania is to run to be the head of your precinct. We have until November 5th to run write-in campaigns. We have over 9,000 precincts statewide. You can run for this position with 10 votes as a write-in and potentially win. We're going to be circulating these graphics all over our social media and an email blast. But this particular one, that letter is from Allegheny County, sent to a judge of elections who broke the law back in 2021. We're not even talking 2020 election. This was 2021. They were allowing folks to come in and vote and not sign the poll book. And the judge of elections herself left the precinct and came back with ballots and said, they were from people up the street. The whistle was blown. Everything's documented. When the county responded, it was with this letter from David Boyce saying, don't do that again. No accountability is how they're able to get away with this crap. And so I am asking everybody, if you can't run for judge of elections, don't have a desire, don't want to, the very least you can do is find out who your judge of elections is. And if you don't have somebody in that place, or you have someone you don't care for, you can recruit somebody for it. Again, we have till November 5th. Scan the QR code. It'll take you to our website that gives you all the instructions of how to run a write-in campaign, how many votes you need, what you should do on election day. And that's what we're going to be pushing from now until November 5th. So go ahead and get rid of that graphic so I can get the real reason for the show up tonight is my special guest, Stewart Rhodes. If you never heard his name before, let me give you a little preview. Stewart was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for seditious conspiracy. Yes, like, share, subscribe. Please share this with people. I don't think his story is told out there, certainly not in a long form like what we're going to do tonight. And it needs to get out there. And in a second, you're going to hear why. Sentenced to 18 years for a seditious conspiracy with ties to January 6th. And he wasn't even in DC on January 6th. Hello? What? Oh, yes, folks. In the United States of America, where justice is supposed to be blind and equal, you can still get thrown in federal prison for most of your life for doing what exactly? Well, he also happens to be the founder of the Oath Keepers. And so, Joel, go ahead and bring Stewart on, and we're going to ask him some questions and have him share his background and perspective, and then hopefully help him out a little bit. Stewart, thank you for taking the time to do this tonight. I know you have a busy schedule. I really appreciate it. Welcome.
Hey, no sweat. Welcome. Thank you for having me. Clarification, though, I was in D.C., but I did not go inside the Capitol.
Shoot, we lost him. Oh no. I hope he's able to get a good enough connection. All right, so he's already corrected me, which is good. I'm glad. He was in DC. He was not at the Capitol. That's what I missed when I met him. I met him last weekend at the Get in the Fight event that General Flynn's America's Futures had, and talked quickly and didn't have a guest this week, and so pulled him in. There he is. You're back.
Not sure what happened there, but yeah, I'm back.
Okay, good. All right, you already corrected me, so I screwed up that detail, which happens on a regular basis. You
okay.
were in DC, but you were not at the Capitol.
I was at the Capitol, but not inside the Capitol. We were on Capitol grounds to protect two permitted events on Capitol grounds. One for Latinos for Trump, about a block north of the building in the park next to the Senate buildings. And the other event was Ali Alexander's event right outside the East Capitol doors. So on the grass outside the Capitol doors is where we were supposed to be to protect an event. And that's why we were there.
Got it. Okay, so I've screwed that up. I've got to fix that moving forward.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
good. Yeah, I didn't go inside. Some of my security guys, our volunteers, did go inside, but like 1,500 other Americans, they walked through doors that were opened by somebody else. In fact, our guys, they followed their protectees, some speakers for Alexander's event, up the steps, and then the doors were magically opened from inside by somebody else, yet to be identified, and then they were shoved in along with the rest of the crowd, like you're being, like you're in a toothpaste tube. When someone stomps on it, you're going in with a crowd like that. So that's how they wound up inside. And the only thing was different about them when they're inside is A, they help police officers, but B, they were oath keepers. And so they were singled out along with the Proud Boys. And we were labeled as the leaders of the insurrection, which is complete nonsense, as a way to try to get President Trump. They wanted to use us and prosecute and persecute us as a stepping stone to putting President Trump in prison.
An insurrection by a bunch of nonviolent individuals who had no weapons. Isn't that the coolest thing ever?
Right. A bunch of veterans who decided to leave their firearms in their hotel rooms in Virginia for the insurrection. Makes all the sense in the world, right? Right. Yeah.
Because when we storm capitals for insurrections, you don't need weapons. Everybody knows that, right?
Yeah. Well, you bring them all the way from Texas, but you leave them in your hotel room. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so looking forward to unpacking this with you. And so I think I was in DC on January 6th as well. I did not go in the Capitol as well.
Insurrectionist. You're an insurrectionist too.
Of course.
You're an unindicted co-conspirator.
I stayed off their radar. Here's why I think why. I think because I didn't have a following yet. Audit the Vote as a movement didn't exist yet. I was still just watching, naively thinking everything was going to come out in court. You, however, had built a massive organization that was doing good things for the country, obviously pro-Constitution. And that's what I want to start unpacking first is as the founder of the Oath Keepers, we talked a little bit on the phone about you starting this. I want to find out a little bit more about that, because I think that's why they targeted you, because you had a pretty big following and they wanted to silence dissent in anybody that was going to speak out against their narrative. And many people have come since then and cowered in fear. And I don't want to necessarily paint every January 6er as this perfect person, because they're not. But most of the 1,500 were probably innocent of the crimes they were accused of, or backed into a corner and took a plea deal for fear of what you essentially stood up and said, I don't care, give it to me, 18 years, whatever. So talk to us about the founding of the Oath Keepers. What did that look like?
Sure. So I served as a paratrooper in the Army. I was disabled in a parachuting accident. And then after that, went to college and then worked for Congressman Ron Paul from Texas in Congress, who was at the time.
Stop. You're already like fan base just went through the roof. You worked for Ron. I think I did see this you worked for Ron Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got out of college and I wanted to go experience Washington, D.C., but I wanted to work for someone that took his oath seriously. And I can only find one. That was him.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Fan through the roof. Keep talking. Working for Ron Paul. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a great honor. So after that, I went to Yale Law School. That's where I got my law degree. And I was at Yale Law School when the Twin Towers fell in Washington, D.C., or in New York. And so, the War on Terror was launched. And I saw conservatives who claimed to be constitutionalists just cheering blatant violations of the Constitution, not just the Patriot Act, but also the holding of American citizens as unlawful combatants, applying the laws of war to Americans, saying that the president, on his say-so alone, can designate anyone on the planet, including U.S. citizens, as unlawful combatants in the war on terror, and just hold them in a military brig or put them on trial in front of a military tribunal. That was the claim power. And of course, I looked at that and so this does not square with the Constitution. Article 3 of the Constitution, the Treason Clause, is very clear that if you're accused of making war in the United States, it requires a public trial with the jury of your peers and extra protections, like 2 witnesses to the same overt act or confession in open court. So I blew the whistle on that at Yale Law School. In fact, the professors there thought I was a leftist because I was criticizing a conservative. So it's pretty funny. But they loved me then. So that paper that I wrote about enemy combatant status won the top prize at Yale for the best paper on the Bill of Rights. And then they awarded me a scholarship to be a Yale research scholar for national security law for a year. That was back then. Now, of course, I'm a devil, right? So things
You're an
change.
insurrectionist.
Yes,
Absolutely.
of
Okay.
course. Right.
So much to unpack there. First of all, clearly where you stand. I mean, Ron Paul is going to go down in history probably as one of the best, if not the best, legislators to ever hit DC with real principle and real integrity that's fought for the Constitution and our rights. So it's amazing that you worked for him. Maybe not now. I do want to hear what your thoughts are on his son, Rand Paul, because I get back and forth. Some people love him. Some people say, oh, he's bought into the swamp. Actually, let's do that now. What do you think about Rand Paul?
He's not his dad, let's put it that way. So unfortunately, he's not bad, but he's not his father. In fact, when his father was running for president in 2008, was it 2008? So I worked on the campaign in 2008 and 2012 when Ron Paul ran for president. And I can't remember which one it was, but at one point, Rand Paul endorsed the opponent before his father was even actually out of the race, which was kind of bizarre. So yeah, he kind of jumped in with the establishment in that sense, in the GOP hierarchy establishment. So,
Wow.
But hey, in 2008, in fact, the 2008 election season is why I started Oath Keepers. So I'm working for the campaign in Nevada. I was on the platform committee. We took over the Republican Party in Nevada. You know, we were going to sweep all the delegates to the national convention. So at the state convention, when the leadership realized we're going to sweep all the delegates, they jumped up and hit the gavel and said, "Oh, we're out of time. We can't hold this. We can't use this room anymore. We're in a 24-hour casino in Reno. Like, we can't use this room anymore. We have to adjourn and convene at a later time." So as Ron Paul went down to the front desk and asked, it's like, "Hey, can we use the room for a little bit while longer?" And I said, "Sure, that's fine." But when we got back, all the John McCain people just fled the building to deny us a quorum, and they never reconvened the convention, of course, and the leadership just picked their own delegates. So they violated their own rules and stole the nomination from Ron Paul, and that happened across the country.
I was going to say, that sounds oddly familiar. We're dealing with that stuff in Pennsylvania at the local level, even. It's
Right.
everywhere,
Oh, yeah.
Stewart.
Yeah.
So,
And
the
both
other
parties
thing
do it, right? It
Oh.
happened to Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party. Yeah.
Sure did. What I want to point out to my audience is this. If you Google Stewart Rhodes and you look up Oath Keepers, you will not see anything good about them whatsoever. When in reality, when you meet him and find out his background, who knew that he had a law degree from Yale? Like, I tend to think that's pretty impressive, or that he worked for Ron Paul. The public doesn't want you to know this, because then you might start to like the guy and ask some questions about what the government did to him. The other thing I want to point out that you said, Stewart, is this is awfully familiar theme, and what the government does to control people is an episode of fear. That's exactly what 9/11 was. I was graduating college, asleep at the wheel, still appalled. I do remember watching the planes go into the Twin Towers from my college apartment in the morning and just being completely appalled. But I also would have gotten on the bandwagon if I was in politics of, heck yeah, war on terror, let's go get them, because I knew nothing about the Constitution or the protections that it was supposed to give us. And so I totally understand why conservatives would have gotten on that bandwagon, but you were blowing the whistle on that back then. Right?
Yeah, because I'm a student of history, and I recognize that that's when people put their rights on the altar of sacrifice for security. And I warn conservatives that when you do this, all the DHS and this massive surveillance state, everything you're creating to go after a radical Islamicist is going to be swung inward on you. So I warned them, and that's exactly what happened. As soon as Obama came in, all of that was created supposedly to go after Islamic terrorists was swung inward on conservatives and constitutionalists and libertarians. Sadly, I was right. So
from where I sit, I know, and that's exactly what they did with COVID. right? Like just this fear mongering. And so what that teaches us that we need to pass to the next generation is when you see especially a big national event like that you have a tendency to respond in fear. We need to train our kids like, hold on a second, take a breath, do not respond emotionally. Let's ask some questions and find out what the heck is actually going on here before we respond. Because that's clearly what governments use to take power and control, because not only did they do it in 9/11, but I would argue, you and I talked on the phone, the pandemic in 2020. Are you of the opinion that the pandemic was planned to control the 2020 election?
Absolutely, we lost data. Absolutely, I think it was. I think that was a bioweapon hatched by Fauci. I think it's now becoming obvious in conjunction with the biolab in China, and it was unleashed intentionally to give them the excuse for the Great Reset worldwide, but also especially here in the United States, to stop Trump and stop MAGA and stop the awakening. So yes, it's a manipulation, but God will use for good, man means for evil. It opened eyes like nothing else, and then the persecution that happened to us. So I look at stuff like this. I think COVID, the stolen election, January the 6th, and the oppression against all of us afterwards is all tied together. They stole the election in 2020. They used COVID as their excuse. They admitted it in the article that they published in February of 2021 in Time Magazine. I encourage listeners to go look that up and read it. It's like what you call a limited hangout. They admitted there was a coordinated conspiracy across the country, not just of leftists, but also establishment never Trumpers, well funded with Zuckerbucks, for example, to go into swing counties in particular in states and change the rules, which means directly violate state election law in the name of COVID. And that triggered a violation of Article 2. Because Article 2 is very clear. It says that state legislature shall have the power to determine the manner for selecting electors, period. It says nothing about judges, nothing about executive branch election officials. Only the state legislature will determine the manner for selecting electors, and they did with state election laws. So when they violated those state election laws, it made it not only illegal under state law, but also unconstitutional. And that's why the Supreme Court had a duty to step in.
Oh shoot. If the connection is bad on his end, hit the chat and let us know, because I'm getting a lot of roboting.
Supreme Court and the Supreme Court.
This is too good, Stewart. We can't lose you. Son of a gun.
All right.
Don't think.
I'm not sure if it's on your or my end.
I don't think I'm wired in, so I don't think it's me, but it always could be me. I asked people to hit the chat if they let us know, and there's not even. Let me see. All right, it seems okay right now. We'll just keep going. Joe, I don't know how it's going on your end.
Let's try it on.
Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. SD says yes, it's on his end.
Well,
we might just have to have you back then for a follow-up if this gets cut out a little bit. It is a bad connection, I know. I'm sorry. Stewart, I'm so intrigued by your story, because it's clear to me the more you talk why you were targeted. You're clearly well-spoken. You understand the Constitution. You understand your rights. And I love everything you know about 2020, because I've been preaching that since. It's one of the things that we use to try to get a petition for an audit of the 2020 election. I'll never forget Time Magazine saying they fortified it. They didn't steal it. They fortified it. But of course, talking to you, you already know that. So you could be sharing my story for me. I know, Amy, he's breaking up. He's going in and out. Stewart, we're going to have to do this again, because I absolutely refuse to not get this story out to the public. The other thing I want him to talk about is, sorry, I'm checking the chats. Yeah, connection's not good. So Yale Law degree. I think that looking at this from a post-2020 lens, I would have maybe not looked at this in the light that I look at it now, but also found out that in the state of Montana, so you had a law degree, so it looks like you were a practicing attorney, but then you got disbarred in 2015 by the state Supreme Court of Montana. Walk us through that, because I highly doubt it was on your end. Of course, the Bar Association is corrupt as all get out, which we've discovered since 2020. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was after, that was 6 years after I founded Oath Keepers. And so I think that played a role in it, is that I was the founder of Oath Keepers. And so they took
Wow.
advantage of, yeah. So yeah, I had a complaint by a client. They had mailed me something, and I had not seen it, I had not checked my mail. Tragedy. I took my mail at my UPS store box for about a month and a half. And that was the excuse they used, that I was unresponsive to the client. And that's what they did. So it's the same thing they
Wow.
did. Having John Mosley, in fact, he was the first attorney for Kelly Meggs, my co-defendant. He was disbarred by Virginia in the middle of our trial because the federal prosecutors made sure that the Virginia bar took him to task for a complaint against him by a client. So I consider it part of.
Oh my gosh. Why don't we try this? Yeah, everyone in chat is saying you're breaking out, Stewart. Why don't you try to go out and come back in and see if that helps?
Okay.
And try to go
Stewart,
out.
see if you can get Ethernet. Haven't suggest not do Wi-Fi and Ethernet only.
I don't know. I know he lives in Texas. That's where he's at. But thank you guys for hanging in there because this is really important. And I'm happy to even try to do this again. You can support him. So here's the short version of the long story that hopefully he makes it back on to tell, is that he wasn't actually given a presidential pardon yet. And that's another question I want to ask him when he comes back is why. But his sentence was commuted, meaning he was able to get out of jail. So he was in prison up until President Trump was inaugurated on January 20th of 2025. President Trump commuted his sentence, so he got out of jail, but he doesn't have the luxury of the pardon that a lot of the other J6 prisoners have, in that it wipes them clean. So they're able to vote. They're able to get their firearms back. They're able to, you guys, my audience knows Robert Morse, the Lego man who was a teacher, had his teaching certificate revoked. Well, he's able to fight now. It's still not exactly easy. He still has to fight to get it back, but he can get it back. Someone like Stewart still has all of those marks against him. So he can't get a job. He can't carry his guns. He can't vote. And I don't know about you, but like the more tech savvy the world gets, sometimes the harder it is to navigate. Like I get irritated just trying to call in a refill prescription from like CVS because I can't get a live person on the phone when I want to ask a flipping question about a prescription drug. It's 30 minutes later, you're still on there hitting 1 and 2, and here's my prescription number. Imagine trying to rebuild your life after you've been completely defamed and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for a crime you didn't commit. It's not exactly an easy road.
18 years.
18 years. And so I was going to plug Stewart, your Give, Send, Go. Joel, if you'll put that up, he needs to rebuild his life. I do want to ask you, Stewart, to tell us, hopefully we have a little bit better connection, why you did not get the pardon, why just a commuted sentence, and is there still hope for a pardon? What do those look like? Is there anything, and leave this up to Joel so people have it. What does it look like to get you to that point?
So we don't know, but on January 20th, on inauguration night, President Trump pardoned everyone except for 14 of us, which were commuted, which means that our sentences were reduced to time served and we were set free. I'm certainly grateful. I mean, obviously, it was wonderful to get that knock on my cell door at about 11:30 p.m. on inauguration night, and they said, pack your crap. It's time for you to go. So very grateful to President Trump. But the ones that were singled out for commutation and not a pardon were all either Oath Keepers or Proud Boys, and we're the ones who went to trial, who refused to bend the knee and kiss the ring, refused to plead guilty to a crime we did not commit. In fact, there were 2 Oath Keepers who sadly did dishonor themselves by pleading guilty to seditious conspiracy and then signed a false statement of facts, which was just a stack of lies against me, saying that Stewart Rhodes told us to enter the Capitol and he had plans since November of 2020 to attack democracy. They just dishonored themselves, but they got no prison time. They were given nothing but probation by the judge. I got 18 years, they got probation, and they were pardoned, which is really strange. So we don't know why. I suspect there's some weenie lawyer in Trump's circle, in President Trump's circle, that convinced him this was necessary somehow. But the problem is, it helps to perpetuate the big lie, the false narrative of J6, that there really was an insurrection. None of us are guilty of anything, and there was no plan by anyone to enter the Capitol on January the 6th. It was a spontaneous event. And in fact, I consider it a manipulated event. It's a protest. There was a massive protest in November. We were there for that, guarding events and people. There was a massive protest in December. We were there for that. Again, guarding events and VIPs and speakers. And J6 was going to be the exact same way. There were 9 permits pulled for events all around the Capitol, just as there had been in November and December. This is important for the audience to understand. In November and December, there were massive rallies like down at Freedom Plaza. People marched up to the Capitol, filled the grass all around the Capitol. Back then, there was no restricted area on the grass. And then they held additional speeches and speakers right there on the street between the Capitol and the Supreme Court. And then we were there for all of that. So J6 was exactly the same way. What was different on J6 is, one, they expanded the perimeter around the Capitol 10 times wider than it was in November and December. And this means that anybody who was down at President Trump's Ellipse rally, when they started walking towards the Capitol to attend other events that were already scheduled, they would not have known, because by the time they got to the Capitol, there were no barriers anywhere. They would not have known they were now standing on so-called restricted grounds. So quite a few of them were charged, like 1,000 people were charged with being on restricted grounds when they're standing on grass that they have no idea has now been magically designated a restricted area. That's the first thing to understand. But it's important for you to know that there were already events planned around the Capitol. That's why we were there. So it's not true at all, as the media continues to say, that President Trump directed his followers to spontaneously march on the Capitol. Like he just all of a sudden, they were all going to be down there at the Ellipse only, but he told them to go to the Capitol, so they decided to go attack democracy. It's just complete garbage. They were planning on going there already anyway. And that's why in his speech, he says, and now you're going to go to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. Because he knew they were already planning on having events. In fact, at the Ali Alexander event outside the East Capitol doors, that was a permitted event on Capitol grounds, Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to speak there, Josh Hawley, other members of Congress, and Roger Stone was a scheduled keynote speaker. So this is a pre-planned event. That's why everyone was marching from President Trump's Ellipse rally to the Capitol, because they were already planning on doing that, as they had done in November and December. What happened on J6, though, is the bad guys manipulated that crowd to be sure they went inside the Capitol, to be sure they fought with police by having police officers as excessive force. I believe there were officers who were designated hitters to provoke the crowd. And then you had people inside the crowd who were agitators, who were undercover agitators. So they're being provoked and agitated from both ends. That's what happened on J6. That's how you get pro-law enforcement Trump supporters to fight cops. You have cops use excessive force against women, against families with kids, against old people, like shoving an old lady down the steps multiple times, shooting an unarmed veteran in the face and killing her. That's what you do to provoke a crowd like that.
So the connection is much better, by the way. Thank you for doing that. So let me, we have questions in the chat, but let me ask you this. Do you think that the Oath Keepers was infiltrated at some point, and that's how you ended up with these people that essentially turned on their oath?
No, our guys, well, two things, unpack that. There was a high-level Oath Keeper that was recruited by the FBI. I'm still under a gag order by the court to tell you this person's name, but the New York Times Oath Keeper informant around November during my trial, New York Times published this person's name. So that was happening, of course. But the men who entered the Capitol on J6, who were Oath Keepers, did nothing wrong. All they did is walk through doors opened by somebody else. First thing they did when they walked inside is did a prayer circle. Next thing they did is they helped a cop. They helped a Capitol Police officer, Harry Dunn, who was about to shoot people because he was so hyper agitated. And he's a big fat guy. He was, out of breath and just what we call condition black, way beyond condition red. He's already hyperventilating and condition black. So our military veterans in that group saw him and said, this guy's about ready to shoot people. So they got in between, put their backs to Harry Dunn, put their hands out towards the Trump supporters that he was yelling at, and de-escalated the situation on both sides. They calmed him down, and I think prevented a horrible tragedy. Having Ashley Babbitt murdered was bad enough, but if Harry Dunn had opened up with a 30-round clip with his M4, 30-round magazine with his M4, it could have been dozens of deaths. So imagine what would happen if that had happened. So that's the reality of J6, is they went inside and helped. They committed no crime. In fact, I don't think anyone that was at the Capitol should have been prosecuted for anything, because they were provoked, and the ones that did fight the police were provoked into it by excessive force by the police officers. And none of us got due process. So that's the other thing. All Americans are presumed innocent until proven guilty in front of an impartial jury of their peers in an impartial court that enforces their rights, their due process rights as a criminal defendant. None of that happened in DC. None of us had a fair jury. None of us had a fair judge. So it was right for President Trump to pardon everyone, all of us, to protect and respect the presumption of innocence. That's the argument I made in an article I wrote from prison, because I was worried about my friends that I had been in prison with who had fought with the police that day. And I knew they were being accused of assaulting police officers, and things they were being accused of were just false. So I wrote that article saying, hey, even though I'm one of the nonviolent guys, I didn't go inside, I didn't fight with the police, but I'm standing up for them. I didn't realize that I'd be the one left out in the cold. So, along with 14 others who did not fight the police also. None of the Proud Boys, none of the Oath Keepers that got a commutation instead of a pardon fought the cops that day. But no one should have been left in prison. It was proper for President Trump to pardon absolutely everyone because of the presumption of innocence. Because you're not going to get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. if you're a Trump supporter. There's no friggin' way.
And so it sounds to me also then like this is a conclusion that I could reasonably draw, is that the people that were commuted is because, or the people that were attacked the hardest and the law came up against seem to be ones that were actually trying to do good things that day and protect people.
Well, it's because we were Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. These are the two groups that across the country, throughout the entire Trump administration, have protected Trump supporters from Antifa in the streets effectively. Both groups do the same. I mean, the different way. The Proud Boys tend to be more like street fighters, go out there and fight with Antifa. Our guys, a lot of them retired police officers. Our ethos is the quiet professionals. We just protect. But no person we protected, no event we protected was ever harmed. We were very successful. And we never had to even use force, which is really ironic, because when you look up in the media, do a search for Oath Keepers, they'll say one of the most violent and extreme organizations, right? And then when you go look at our actual record, we never used force one time, never had to. We always used deterrence because the bad guys didn't want to dance. You know, we would show up. They knew we were armed. Our retired cops can carry nationwide. And even for current serving law enforcement, they can even carry inside Washington, D.C. And so Antifa knows that when they see an Oath Keeper hat, they know among that group of people are retired or current law enforcement officers carrying guns, and they don't want to get shot. So they don't mess with us, and we don't mess with people we're protecting. We don't provoke them. We told our guys, don't yell back, let them yell, let them run their mouth all they want. You just protect. Your only job there is keep your people safe, the ones that you're assigned to protect. And let them run their mouth and just give them a cold stone face. And that actually works in many ways because they get nothing back from us, no feedback. So we were very, very successful, and all throughout our entire history, not one use of force incident. You can't find one anywhere. And yet we're still painted as one of the most violent organizations out there. It's just crazy. You know, the false narrative is amazing.
If anything is clear, it's how important it is for us to get on the ground and only believe what we experience ourselves with and feel with our own eyes and ears. Because I'll be the first to admit, now that I think back, we had in the summer of 2021, we had a fundraiser Patriot Party at a park outside in Beaver County, where I live in Pennsylvania. And I remember a young man coming and saying he was a member of the Proud Boys and he was there to protect people, and he was peaceful. But I also remember at the time, because of what had come out in the media, I was a little like, I don't know if these guys are good or what. But my experience with him, I mean, I let him stay there, but I remember feeling uneasy about that.
Like, that's hilarious.
Oh gosh,
yeah, you were so much safer with him there than with that. That's
the point.
Right.
Is with my experience.
Right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. The connection is better, but that's what's causing us a little bit of problems. Thank you guys. Please share this. I know we had some issues with the connection. We can edit that out and fix it. We can even I'll be back in a heartbeat because I have such a heart for these people and get these stories out when we have a better connection. But please share this because his story, most of you, probably a lot of you watching this, never heard of him before. And that's a shame. I thought January 20th, the reason I'm doing this, I told you this, Stewart, is because I thought that these guys would get paraded all over. The good guy conservatives turn, the Tuckers who left Fox and the Rogans who had an awakening, and they would get paraded and their stories would get told, because this is how we avoid it from ever happening again, is we have to tell the truth and shape the narrative so the history books will reflect what actually happened, and our kids can be students of history and learn from this. And the next fear mongering crap that probably drops in 20 years from COVID, they might stand a chance of stepping back and go, okay, wait a minute, maybe we don't let the government seize power. But at any rate, the point of me telling that story about the Proud Boys, because you're right, my experience with him was he was the sweetest thing. We were definitely more protected with him there. He was wonderful. We had no problems, no issues. He didn't instigate. Thankfully, we didn't have any issues that day anyway. But looking back, the story you're telling now makes me realize they really did lie and paint these guys as lunatics, because probably by and large, the majority of them, if not all, are really good guys that are just trying to protect. I mean, ex-military veterans, ex-police officers, people that just want to do their duty as an American citizen, and they are being painted as the most violent, vile human beings that exist in our country. That drives me bonkers. Can you, Stewart, have you thought about like lawsuits against Wikipedia? Like what do we do other than what we're doing now?
Yes, I'm going to be doing some defamation lawsuits. I mean, defamation, like the statute of limitations is only a year. So a lot of the defamation that I suffered, I was in solitary confinement when it was going on. I spent over a year in solitary confinement. So from my day of my arrest, this is important for people to understand, is my only priors were speeding tickets. 56 years of age, only speeding tickets, and yet I was denied pretrial release and held in solitary confinement. And here I am, a Yale Law graduate. I had no access to a law library at all before, during, or during my trial. No ability to aid my own defense at all. So that's what happens in America today. So the presumption of innocence is dead. They presume you're guilty, and then you have it, like Pelosi said, she turned out to be correct. Under the Biden administration, at least, you're presumed guilty, and you have an opportunity to prove your innocence at trial. So that's the reality.
And so another thing you said that struck me is that we, not just the presumed guilty, and that you're right, we have to fix that tremendously, but the defamation. So, because I experienced this with Governor Shapiro, if you don't, so what, you can slander somebody and tell horrible lies. The internet's forever, so they can find it. But as long as you don't catch it in the first year, they can get away with it if you're not able to prosecute in the right amount of time. Is that right?
Right. Well, it's also if you're a public person, if you're considered a public person, then the standard is the New York Times versus Sullivan case makes it a very difficult burden. So if you're not a public person, like that Sandlin kid who was defamed all over the media when he was standing out, in front of down in Washington, D.C., just all he was doing was smiling while this guy on a drum, this Indian guy on a drum, is beating a drum. He was defamed all over the media. Because he was not a public person, he won a massive lawsuit. So all he had to show was that what they were saying about him, he was racist and a fascist. All he had to do is show that was false. But if you're a public person, like I am, like you are now, you have to show that not only was it false, knew it was false, and they did it anyway.
Oh, this connection. He's probably saying did it anyway with intention to harm. Yep. And I had pretty rock solid proof of now Governor Shapiro doing that with his attorney. Are we roboting? Yay. Oh, we're back. I can tap dance, Stuart. I'm good at that.
You're good. Okay, great. But yeah, it's a tougher standard because of the New York Times versus Sullivan case, which really needs to be overturned. It's ridiculous. So if you're a public person, and how do you define a public person in the age of social media now, right? I mean, everybody now is a blogger. Everyone's a journalist. So everyone's a public person now because you're on Facebook. You do Facebook or you do an X space. You're now a public person, probably. So they use this as their shelter to allow them to grossly defame you. And I've been defamed horribly. The most recent ones were USA Today and then MSNBC. Just ridiculous. And so I'm going to be suing those two organizations for defamation for sure. Yes.
Good for you. And so my audience, Joel, put the give, send, go. Like, I get that people are very skeptical to give nowadays because there is so much talk of grifters, and especially, oh my gosh, didn't even talk about the Wall Street Journal article that they published on Brandon Strzok and Scott Pressler drama that hit this week as well.
That's why when you donate to a J6er, you donate directly to their give, send, go. That's going to the individual. This is to me. It's run by my cousin Kyla, but it goes straight to me. There's nobody else in between. So you're not going to worry about someone, skimming money or whatever. It's going to come right to me to help me rebuild my life. And I would encourage folks to do the same for other J6ers. Just go find their gifts and go and donate directly to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to share is that I vet everybody. Although I knew who Stewart Rhodes was, it was an honor to meet him. I still, of course, and you should do this too. I hope you did this about me. I still ran him by some of my closest contacts to make sure, hey, what I looked at on Google, there's some concern. What do you know? No, he's legit. Okay. So
Yeah.
I've done my due diligence. I would not ask my audience to support someone financially that I haven't vetted. And so just wanted to throw that little tidbit in there. That doesn't mean I'm right 100% of the time, but best I can tell, this dude's legit. You are safe giving to this Give, Send, Go account. So, and it'll help him rebuild his life and go after the other people. Want to know, what do we do? We need to support the people like you that are willing to fight back, because not most people are not.
My mission remains the same. So my mission is to defeat the deep state by any means necessary, and to honor my oath to support and defend the Constitution. That hasn't changed. So this did not crush me. I did not let them break me. That's why they held me in solitary confinement, me and my co-defendants also. They wanted to coerce us into a false confession of guilt and then a false statement to bear false witness against President Trump. They wanted to put him in prison. That's what they wanted to do. And they wanted to force us to dishonor ourselves. And we just refused to do it. All my co-defendants, Kenny Harrelson, Kelly Maggs, Jessica Watkins, Thomas Caldwell, they're honorable people. They refused also to submit, and they went to trial, and we were held in solitary confinement as a way to try to coerce us. When Americans are held in solitary confinement overseas by other countries, our State Department labels that torture and condemns it, and yet our own government does it here at home.
Doing it on the homeland, that should make you sick to your stomach.
Right. So I'm going to send you my transcript from my sentencing.
Please do. I'd love to include that in the show notes.
At my sentencing. Yeah. Sure, you can put it up for your audience to read. So how I am, I never bent the knee. Even at sentencing, I looked the judge right in the eye and said, "I'm a political prisoner. Like President Trump, my only so-called crime is opposing those who are destroying our country." And I also looked right in the eye and told him again, the election of 2020 was stolen and unconstitutional. He didn't like that. So
that's why I really like you.
Like that. Oh yeah, that's when he hammered me extra hard. That's okay.
Good.
So the lawyers tend to advise their clients to do things. I'm a recovering lawyer, like a recovering alcoholic. That's how I look at myself. Because lawyers, they default to the most dishonorable and cowardly position. They tell their clients, "Oh, you got to make a deal. You got to plead guilty, and you got to agree to cooperate," which means to lie, to test a lie against someone else. And then they'll tell them at sentencing, "Blame Trump. Say that you got fooled by him and then the election really wasn't stolen. And now you realize that Trump sold you a bunch of lies." And some people bent to that pressure by their lawyer and said that kind of stuff. And I just refused. I just would not do that.
Let me look through the chat to see if we have questions. That courage is it's not often you come across somebody with that type of courage that would look a judge right in the face and say the 2020 election was stolen, knowing that they were going to get completely railroaded anyway. And then did you get the longest sentence of all the Oath Keepers?
No. Enrique Tarrio, of the Oath Keepers, yes. I got 18 years.
Yes.
My nearest co-defendant, I believe, was 14 years. Enrique Tarrio got 22. So that's the guy that wasn't in D.C. So he wasn't even in D.C. at all.
He wasn't in D.C.
But it was funny because... Yeah, right. I got a funny story about Enrique Tarrio and I, though. So the night of the 5th, January the 5th, he had just got kicked out of D.C. because of the burning of the BLM banner, which you would think would be like, oh my God, it's such a horrible hate crime. But he got banned from D.C. But right before he left, I was with our general counsel for Oath Keepers, Kelly Sorrell, and she was volunteer counsel for Oath Keepers, and her and I were dating. But she was also volunteer counsel for Latinos for Trump. And she was going to meet Bianca Gracia, the leader of Latinos for Trump, who I was protecting the next day. Bianca Gracia's event, Latinos for Trump's rally, is where we were going to be. And we did. We protected that event, and we spoke there that day too. But that night, I escorted her to go meet with Bianca Gracia because she had gotten death threats. Kelly Sorrell was a whistleblower in Detroit, in Michigan, during the election. She was working with lawyers for Trump and saw some of the election fraud. The cases being brought in, unsecured, no one checking them. So she had death threats. So myself and 3 other others were escorting her to go meet Bianca and talk to her. Then we get to the hotel, and Bianca's like, "Hey, Enrique was kicked out of the hotel, but he's across the street in the parking garage. Can you come talk to him? He might need your advice as an attorney." And so Kelly Sorrell said, "Sure." So we escorted her across the street down in the parking garage. Enrique and I had never actually met each other before. Our organizations had worked together across the country, but we had never met. So we walk up, and I said, "Hey, I'm Stewart Rhodes with Oath Keepers. I'm glad you're out of jail. Nice to meet you." And he said, "Pleasure's all mine." And then I walked away to give them attorney-client privilege conversation with Kelly Sorrell. My guys and I, you can see us on video because he had a videographer with him filming a documentary. You can see us turn our backs and go walk away and watch the parking garage. We're on security. That was twisted by the J6 Select Committee. They took the still photo of him and I shaking hands, and they showed the still photo. They didn't show the video because the video would have showed that I just said hello and walked away. It was a greeting, not a meeting. They took a still photo and said, "Here's the meeting, the planning meeting between the leader of the Proud Boys and the leader of the Oath Keepers on the night of the 5th to plan their attack on the Capitol the next day." That's how absurd this stuff is. They'll take one still photo and misrepresent it to paint the false narrative that that our 2 organizations coordinated on an attack against the Capitol. And it's all meant to create a false conspiracy pyramid. Tario and myself, all of our Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, and then put President Trump on top like a cherry on top of a sundae as the final target. That's what they meant to do. And they were all pressured. Tario was offered a chance to go home. They told him, "If you'll sign a statement that President Trump told you to go inside, told you to send your men inside, then you can go home." He said no. Our guys were offered a go home free pass also if they would turn on me. Because I was at the top of the Oath Keeper pyramid, the only person I could have turned on would have been President Trump. So they sent us a letter. I'm in solitary confinement in Alexandria Jail before my trial, and we all get the same letter. It says that you're being charged with seditious conspiracy, which is the same as treason. So therefore, we're going to ask the judge for life in prison. Oh, and you have 10 days, whatever it was, to make a deal. So I wadded that thing up and flushed it. I threw it in the toilet in my cell and flushed it because that's where crap like that belongs. I'm not going to do it. So that's what they tried. That's my point. Is that the whole point of prosecuting action, and then they hoped to pressure us into confessing falsely, and then
Oh shoot, he's breaking out again. I think the last thing I heard him say is false confession. And I've lost track of how many times I've heard a January 6th defendant tell that story, that they were offered a sweet deal if only they would turn on President Trump and say that the 2020 election was just fine. The Associated Press, we put out sorry, Stewart, I'm just talking because we're not getting great connection. The Associated Press put out an article against Lindell because the Lindell trial is this week, which is very important, by the way. Pray for Mike Lindell and everything that's going on in that trial. Oh, sort of. Maybe try going out and coming back in again. It seems to work for a little while, and then it goes wonky again. What was I talking about? Lindell's trial. How many times we've heard this? This is a common theme. They clearly wanted to control the narrative and say that 2020 was totally fine. There was nothing to see here and no questions. Oh, and the Associated Press, I click on my phone late last night as I'm scrolling through stuff, making sure I got back to everybody that absolutely had to get back to, which if you're one that's fallen off the radar, I do apologize. Keep pinging me. I'll get there eventually. And Google up pops an Associated Press article about the Lindell trial. And of course, claiming the 2020 election. I can't believe the audacity. The 2020 election, safest and secure, most free and fair election in nation's history. AP, really? After everything that's come out, you're still running with that? You're still willing to print that, to put that in print? 81 million votes. Really? After all of this? Apparently, really, because that was their plan with people like Stewart and all the others that they tried to coerce into saying that January 6th was, sorry, we were wrong. We're going to turn on President Trump. The 2020 election was fine. That's clearly what they were after. It is just so disgusting. Lola, they're stopping the communication between you two. I bet they follow Stewart. Oh, that's probably accurate. If they haven't figured it out, clearly Stewart is not all talk, and neither am I. So they come after us. They're going to get it back way worse. Let's see if we can get Stewart back on stage. All right. Can you see? Let's see. Talk to me. How is it? Oh. Son of a gun, Stewart. The connection stinks. We need to do this again. I know you're busy, but we need to do this again so we can get it out. I will edit as best I can to avoid this for the listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcast. But anyway, let me see the chat. If Stewart is not able to connect, we will go ahead and wrap this up. I'm making sure I got everybody's question answered. I think I did. I know. So my audience knows we always close with a funny video. And Joel, I'm hoping you have something queued up for something funny. And Stewart, if you're able and want to stay backstage so that we can chat afterwards and maybe talk about doing a follow-up. So I wanted to get your story told so badly. And I think we did a decent job getting it out there, but clearly a lot of connection issues. So thank you guys for hanging with us and bearing through the technical difficulties. Technology, love and hate it. Go ahead and queue up that video. So next week, I hesitate to announce my guest that I have booked for next week just because it is a really big name. And I just want to make sure that it is set before I announce it, but don't miss next Wednesday. I think the guests are going to be incredible. Everyone has their own story and their own reason for sharing and the reason that I'm connecting to get their message out. But next week is we have somebody on deck that's really special and very big in the MAGA movement. So I'm looking forward to sharing him. All right, that'll let you know it's a him. Sharing him with my audience. And Joel, cue a funny video? Yes, no, maybe?
Double click on my computer. I can see your computer. No. Click on my computer on your computer. How can I click on your computer from my computer? There is an icon labeled my computer on your computer. Double click it. What the hell? What is your computer doing on my computer? Double click on your computer. Which icon do I have to click? My computer. Tell me, where do you live? I go to your house to click on your computer. Oh my god!
That's fantastic. I'll answer one more question in the chat. SD, I did not get Act 12 fell off my radar. Act 12 fell off my radar, but keep on me. Do not miss next week, you guys. These are going to get better and better. We are the news now. And apparently God said, you're going into media. I had last 2 weeks, I've had like a little bit of a midlife crisis thinking I have to forge a whole new career path. And it's media? Really? I would never have chosen this, but yet here I am. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will see you guys next week, 9 o'clock Wednesday night. Over and out.